everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel for NCERT Science. Alright, so today we will be talking about Chapter 13 in NCERT Science for Class 9, and that will be Why Do We Fall Ill? So this is a biology chapter. Until the previous chapter we did physics, and now we are going to finish the course with 3 chapters of biology. The next chapter is natural resources, which is like part biology and part geography, but we're still going to do it because it's in the syllabus. Alright, so I want to do my standard speech before that. I want to mention 3 things. The first one is that this video will be helpful for those writing their CBSE exams, CBSE board exams, NTSE, NEET, NTSE and NEET. JEE, whoever is writing JEE, they might not find this very useful because they don't have biology in JEE. But if you want to, for nostalgia, maybe if you have nostalgia with this chapter, if you want to listen in, feel free by all means. Please do watch it if you want to. But as an exam, the 3 biology chapters that we are going to do next, they will not be helpful for JEE. Alright, so the second thing that I want to mention is that I want you to take your own notes, because as I say in every video, I will be presenting in my own words, and I have pictures taken from the NCERT official website, but that doesn't mean you can copy what I am saying, because I am going to talk in my own words and in a way that I understand it, but you are supposed to take your own notes in your own words based on how you understand it. Alright, that will make it easier for you to remember, and that will help you remember better in your exam. Alright, and the third thing is that I intend these videos to be under 1.5 hours, because I want these to be helpful for everybody, even those who are trying to look for a video to recap a day before their test, or the night before their test, or the day of their test maybe. Right, so I want it to be helpful for all of them. So I'll be going over all the concepts very quickly, and I will be telling you if there are important questions anywhere, and if there are sometimes I even tell you what kind of questions they might ask and all of that. So I try to keep it under 1.5 hours. So if you think I'm going fast, feel free to change your YouTube settings to 7.5. Alright, so let's start with Chapter 13 in biology in NCERT Science. That is a biology chapter. Why do we fall ill? And this is about the various diseases, how to prevent it, how to diagnose it, how to treat it, and all of that. Alright, so there's another thing that I want to mention. If you've joined this channel for this chapter, welcome to our channel. But also feel free to go back and watch the other videos, because it gives you that sense of satisfaction and completion, right? That you've watched all 12 videos before this video, and then you came to this video. And it's that, plus you'll get the content that I explained in the previous chapter, plus you'll be able to understand my jokes sometimes, because when I mention things that I said in the previous videos, I do that sometimes. Those who've been watching my videos since the first chapter, they'll be able to get our inside jokes. But if you want to get our inside jokes too, if you want to understand our inside jokes, then I recommend you go back to the previous videos and watch from chapter 1. Alright, so with that said, let's start with Chapter 13, Why Do We Fall Ill? So we're starting the chapter with a question. I think that was the second chapter, Is Matter Around Us Pure? That also we started with a question, right? So by the time we end this chapter, we are going to have answers to many questions, and especially this question. Alright, so we're starting this lesson with an activity that I want you to do. Alright, and all this is an introduction. I want you to go over the introduction, see if there is and mark the important points and make sure you know them. I'm not going to say see if there are, that's what I was about to say, but then there will be important points in here, and there will be important points in the introductory paragraphs of every chapter, because they set the stage for this concept, right? So to get all the previous lessons recapped in a few questions or a few points, or to know what NCERT expects you to know before this test, before we start this chapter, is very important. So I highly recommend you go over these introductory paragraphs and note down the important points. Alright, so let's start with health and its failure, and let's talk about the significance of health. So we use the word health very often. It's very common, right? You say, whenever you see your grandparents, you say, is your health fine? And your grandparents will say, yeah, I just went to the market yesterday and bought a few treats for you, and they give it to you. All good, very nice, but that's not exactly the definition of health. If they base their answer, if they're telling you that they're healthy based on their ability to walk to the market, that's not a concrete definition. Now, I'm not saying if you walk to the market, you're not healthy. That's not what I mean. I'm saying that you're not exactly healthy if you're limiting your definition of health to only being able to walk to the market, or only being able to, for a dancer, only being able to stretch well, right? For its health is so health is viewed differently for different professions, right? So for a dancer, stretching properly would be healthy. For an athlete, running fast would be considered healthy. For older people, walking or going to the market to buy something, that would be considered healthy. And there are also other various situations where we use healthy. We say he or she has a healthy attitude, or see right here, we say healthy attitude. But that all those are not exactly what health means. Just like how we kept rejecting certain situations in physics for the chapter work and energy, the definition of actual scientific definition of work was nowhere related to what we think work is, right? Similarly, the scientific definition of health is very far away from what we think health is. All right. So, what is health? Health, according to the World Health Organization, is a state of being physically, mentally, and socially healthy and socially fit, and having the absence of diseases. So just the absence of diseases doesn't make you healthy, and just being physically, mentally, and socially fit doesn't make you healthy, right? So it should be a combination of physically, mentally, and socially fit, as well as being free of diseases. All right, so that is health. So there is an effect of, there is the effect of personal and community issues on our overall health. All right, so if you take personal issues, maybe your mind is not good. Maybe you are sad or anxious or frustrated for some reason, for any reason, it doesn't matter. If you have not been mentally fit for a long time, then you would be considered unhealthy. All right, unhealthy doesn't necessarily mean you have a cold, or you have a fever, or you're sneezing or coughing too much. That is not the set definition of being unhealthy. Even being disturbed at mind, whether it's because of your exams approaching and you're anxious, or if you're just feeling very frustrated or sad, that is all unhealthy, because you're not mentally fit. And if you're not socially fit, if you are very anxious about social gatherings, or if you can't talk to people very comfortably, I'm not saying it's wrong. There are introverts. There are people who are not comfortable with people. They're not comfortable with social gatherings, but that is not so. You would not be considered socially fit in such situations. And if you are not physically fit, if you have like physical diseases like cold, cough, fever, the list keeps going on, then you're not physically fit. So those are all personal issues. And what are community issues? If you maintain good relations with your community, that will have an overall positive effect on your health, right? Because there are two ways of looking at community issues. The first way is that if you are happy with everyone around you, then your overall happiness is good, and you feel happy all the time. You don't have to worry about which neighbor is spying on you, or which neighbor you have to spy on, or which neighbor is you know talking bad stuff about you behind your back. You don't need to worry about anything. All of those give you depression, anxiety, that frustration. All of that again makes you mentally unfit, right? So um having that closeness with your community and being friendly with everyone in your community, that is one way of of having good community relationships. The other one is the you know the effect of community activities on our health. So imagine if the municipality doesn't send someone to take our garbage out for many months, let's say, the whole roads will be full of garbage. You don't have place to put your garbage. You will be surrounded by garbage, and that will give rise to the breeding spots for diseases, right? There are many mosquitoes, many house flies, all of that. They sit on the garbage, they sit on your food, and then you get infected because of that. So all of those, they're community issues, right? So even another way of thinking about it is, if you are suddenly ill, your community calls the ambulance for you. Your neighbors might call the ambulance for you. If you are unable to call the ambulance, right? So those are examples of being fit on this on a community level. All right. So being personally fit and fit based on the community level, they're both uh, important in being healthy. All right. So we have another activity here, activity 13.2. There's another activity 13.3. All right, that I think you can do, right? And then we need food to be healthy, and this food will have to be earned by doing work. So the opportunity to do work has to be available. So all this is the effect of community on your health. All right. So if you don't have food, I mean, if you don't have a job, if you don't have a way of earning money, you won't have good food. If you don't have good food, you won't have good health because of malnutrition. Your immune system will be suppressed. You will be more prone to diseases, right? So that is how, even for your job, your community is important. All right. So the 5 F's are here. All right. The first one is fluid, right? Let me try to zoom in. Okay. So the first one is fluid. I don't think you can see. And I also don't know why this zoomed out all of a sudden. One moment. All right. So the first F would be fluid. Let me color. I do not know why, but I'm just going to list them. The first one would be fluid. The second one would be fingers. Right? The third one would be flies. And let's see what the fourth and fifth ones are. I do not understand why this is happening. But these are the 5 F's. Alright. So they're important. Making sure you have all these 5 F's under control are very important. Is very important. So to take the first 3, fluids would be, if you fluids could be body fluids like sweat, saliva, urine, all of that. Disposing of them carefully would prevent diseases, right? Alright, so I made this I just press this up. Okay, so the first one would be fluids, fingers, slides, fields, and floods. All right. So the so there are two ways that we're looking at it: hygiene and sanitation. Protecting the water source would be hygienic, and treating and storing water safely would be um, sanitation. So protecting would be hygiene, and storing it and treating it would be sanitation. Washing your hands before and after before and after taking food would be hygiene, and washing hands after defecation would be sanitation. All right. So flies covering the food would be hygienic, and controlling flies would be sanitation. Cleaning vegetables and fruits before use, that is from the fields, would be hygienic, and avoiding open defecation would be sanitation. All right. Floods, proper drainage system would be hygienic, and treatment of water would be sanitation. All right. So that's how you prevent the transmission of diseases by maintaining sanitation and hygiene. All right. So I want to talk about the distinctions between and the differences between healthy and between being healthy and disease free. All right. So health is we have the tendency to define health as the absence of disease or being disease free, right? So, but what is meant by disease, right? Disease is self-explanatory. Dis and ease. Dis is no, like there is no, and ease is being comfortable. So you are not comfortable or you are uncomfortable, right? So the word is used in a more limited meaning. We talk about disease when we have a cough or a cold or we're feeling uncomfortable, but even being mentally uncomfortable or socially uncomfortable, they're all diseases, all right? So they're just not, they're not just cold, cough, fever, stomachache, chest pain. Those are not the only diseases, okay? So, having, being uncomfortable in any way is a disease, all right? So we can be in poor health without there being a simple cause in the form of an identifiable disease, all right? So we have 3 questions here that I want you to try, and then let's look at how diseases are caused. So what does disease look like? In the first place, how do we know that there is a disease, right? How do we know that there is something wrong with us? So to answer that, let's talk about tissues, right? Tissues make up organs, and organs make up organ systems. Organ systems carry out the basic functions of the body. Each of the organ systems has specific organs, all right? And these organs have particular functions. So if you take, for example, the digestive system has the stomach and intestine, and it helps to digest food taken in from outside the body, all right? So it breaks down the food. The whole digestive system, the saliva in the mouth breaks down the food. It reaches the stomach where hydrochloric acid is produced, and then it reaches the small intestine where important food is absorbed to convert into energy. Large intestine where it is passed out of our body. The waste is passed out of our body. All right. So that's how digestive system works to give us energy from the food that we take from outside. Similarly, the musculoskeletal system helps us move, right? So when there is a disease, either the functioning of one or more systems of the body changes for the worse, all right? So it deteriorates, right? That's the opposite of improve. So something bad happens to one or more organ systems of our body, and that is when we can say that we have a disease, all right? So there are many diseases that give rise to symptoms. So symptoms are like signals, right, that something is wrong with your body, all right? So if we have a headache, if we have cough, if we have loose motions, if we have a wound with pus, they're all symptoms, right? So it doesn't matter what disease right now. At this point, it doesn't matter what disease we're talking about, but they're all symptoms. All right, so they indicate that there may be a disease, but they don't indicate what the disease is. So symptoms are like signals They're like, something's wrong with your body, right? So a headache could mean just stress, or it could mean that you have exercised a lot, so that you don't have a lot of oxygen going to your brain, or it could even mean something as uh, as complicated or as dangerous as meningitis. That's something wrong with your brain fluid, right? Or it could mean, you are not able to breathe properly, or it could mean fever. So one symptom could be as a result of various diseases. That's why when you have a symptom and when you go to the doctor, they give you various tests. They say, okay, give your blood sample and then take a urine test, and then if we're not able to figure it out, we'll do an ultrasound. There are many possible diseases for one symptom, and signs of diseases are what physicians will look for on the basis of the symptoms. So signs are a little more effective. They will give a little more definite indication of the presence of a particular disease. All right. So laboratory tests being done are also useful in finding out the disease further. All right. So we have two types of diseases: acute and chronic. The manifestations of disease will be different depending on a number of factors. Some so acute and chronic are based on the difference in time. So acute ailments or acute diseases are for a short time, all right, like a common cold or a mild fever. They're all acute diseases. But chronic diseases like um, a smoker's lung or pneumonia, or a problem with your lung, or a cardiovascular problem, something wrong with your heart. All of those are chronic conditions. They have life, I mean, long lasting results. All right. So we have activity 13.4, and then we have chronic diseases and poor health. So they have acute and chronic diseases have different effects on our health, right? So acute disease, which we get over very soon, will not have time to cause major effects on our general health, all right? But chronic conditions will cause a major effect on our general health. Very good example of chronic disease that I just thought of would be AIDS, right? It's a long-lasting disease, and it suppresses your immune system so much that most of the patients diagnosed with AIDS do not pass away because of AIDS. They pass away because of secondary ailments that were caused because of immunosuppression that AIDS had an effect on, right? So AIDS decreased the immune system of the body, and that is how even a disease as common as and as less dangerous as common cold has a profound impact on such people, and most people pass away with secondary diseases rather than AIDS itself in the case of AIDS. All right. So let's so after once we talk about that, let's talk about the causes of diseases. So what causes diseases? We've been talking for more than 20 minutes, I think, about the cause, about what is considered a disease, how diseases are, what diseases are, all of that. So what causes diseases? When we think about the causes of diseases, we must remember that there are many levels of such causes. All right. So if there is a baby suffering from loose motions, we can say that that cause is probably an infection, right? But the next question is, where did that infection come from? Suppose we find that the infection came through drinking unclean water, right? So this is very common in rural areas where there is unclean water. The water is not very clean, and because of that, babies have many diseases like fever, loose motions. They have cough, all of that. So one reason may be that the baby is not healthy, right? As a result, it may be more likely to have disease when exposed to risk. All right, whereas healthier babies would not. If there are two babies and one of them has a suppressed immune system and one of the other has a good immune system, even if they're both, exposed to the same risk factor, maybe, I mean, the baby with the less, with the suppressed immune system is more likely to, catch that disease, right? But the healthier baby is less likely. If the risk factor is, very dangerous, even the healthy baby, if there are chances of even the healthy baby being sick, but it's usually more likely for the immunosuppressed person to catch a disease. All right. So it's also possible that the baby has some genetic difference, right? So right now in 1 or 2 minutes, we just talked about the various causes, various factors that have to be taken into account, even though we know what caused the disease, right? It could be the immune system, the strength of the immune system. It could be the surroundings, the environment that the person is exposed to. It could be it could be the genetic tendency to fall sick or to be healthy, right? It could be how nourished you are. If you are malnourished, if you are undernourished, if you're not nourished enough, if you don't take enough food, then it would be hard for your immune system to develop. So you would have immunosuppression, and that would cause you to be more likely to diseases, right? So there are so many factors that cause disease. Even if you know what caused the disease, you might not be sure why it's causing that disease, right? It could be any of these factors that we discussed just now. All right. So let's talk about infectious and non-infectious diseases. So if acute and chronic diseases were based on the difference of their time, infectious and non-infectious diseases are based on their difference of source. All right. So it's important to keep public health and community health factors in mind, because when I talk about the garbage, the failure of the municipality to take out the garbage, that would make everyone sick because of food poisoning or something, right? So it's useful to think of the immediate causes of the diseases belonging to two distinct groups. One would be infectious, mostly microbes or microorganisms, and such diseases are called infectious diseases when these microbes are the immediate causes. And this is because the microbes can spread in the community, and the diseases they cause will spread with them. All right. So on the other hand, there are diseases that are not caused by infectious agents. So the causes vary, but they are not external causes like microbes that can spread in the community. They're mostly internal, non-infectious diseases. All right. So some cancers are caused by genetic abnormalities. High blood pressure can be caused by excessive weight and lack of exercise or stress, right? So many other diseases where the immediate causes are not infectious, maybe a problem with your heart because you take too much stress, right? All of these are not infectious. There is no mosquito biting you to give you a heart, problem with your heart. It's mostly non-infectious. All right. So we have a trivia box kind of a thing here that you can read if you that you have to read, right? You can read is not an option. You have to read that. All right. So the ways in which diseases spread and the ways in which they can be treated and prevented at community level would be different for different diseases. So if it's an infectious disease, making sure to eliminate breeding grounds for microbes or microorganisms would be one way. If it is a non-infectious disease, maybe caused because of stress, a lot of stress, then adding welfare programs like awareness programs, that such steps would be helpful in preventing non-infectious diseases, whereas infectious diseases would be improving overall hygiene conditions and sanitation conditions. All right, so there are two questions that I want you to try to answer, and let's talk about infectious diseases. So agents are those organisms which transfer the disease. So infectious agents are microorganisms like protozoa or single-celled animals like amoeba, or bacteria. There are fungi, there are viruses, right? There are worms, right? All there are many. There are mosquitoes, there are house flies. All these are infectious agents. Alright, so we have examples of such organisms here in the whole page. Alright, and common examples of diseases caused by viruses are the common cold, influenza, dengue fever, AIDS, right? All of that. These days we have COVID, that's running rampant all over the world, right? So that's because of a virus. But then there are bacteria that cause um, diseases, and such diseases, there are diseases like typhoid, fever, cholera, tuberculosis, anthrax. They're all caused by bacteria, right? And there are skin infections or skin diseases caused by fungi, and protozoa and microbes cause many familiar diseases like malaria and kala azar. All right, so intestinal worm infections like elephantiasis, there are many other infectious diseases as well, right? They are caused by worm infections. All right, they're caused by worms. So why should we think of all these infectious agents? That is and the answer to that would be to understand what kind of treatment would eliminate that disease and that microbe from our body. All right, so viruses live inside host cells while bacteria very rarely do. So viruses, bacteria and fungi multiply very quickly, but worms multiply very slowly in comparison, right? So all of those factors, those differences, they change and they affect the treatment time, the treatment kind, all of that. They're all affected by, by knowing what kind of infectious agent caused that disease. If you're not sure whether a mosquito bite caused the disease or if there is a worm inside your intestine, there is no, there is no point in taking anti-malarial drugs if you have like loose motions or diarrhea, right? So it's just like that. You have to know what caused your disease in the first place to be able to find out an effective way an effective way to eliminate it. All right, so antibiotics would be a common way to eliminate bacteria, but if there are no bacteria in your body, what's the use of taking antibiotics, right? Similarly, antiviral drugs are for viruses, but if there are bacteria in your body, there's no point of taking antiviral drugs because there are no viruses, and these antiviral drugs don't have any function in your body if there are no viruses to kill, right? So the difference between antibiotics and antiviral drugs would be the that viruses are very hard to kill because they take over the host mechanism. Once they enter a host, they take over the host mechanism. So they're harder to kill than bacteria. So antiviral drugs are more strong, right? And the antibiotic will work only against bacterial part of the infection, not the viral infection, because they have the concept behind an antibiotic is to break the defense mechanisms of a bacteria and to kill the bacteria. But the defense mechanism for a virus is different. So that same drug cannot break through the defenses of the defense mechanisms of bacteria and viruses. All right, so that's how different drugs are used to treat different diseases, and that is why knowing what caused your disease is important in treating it. Alright, so there is an activity up here that I missed that I want you to try, and then let's talk about the means of spread. So we know what the difference between symptoms and signs. We know how to find out what disease we have. We know what caused the disease, right? But how did this spread? How did the disease spread? All right, so mostly infectious diseases spread very rampantly. All right, they're very fast. There are a few diseases in which there is slow transmission, but mostly most of the familiar diseases spread very quickly. All right, so they can be communicated. So passing it on to someone else, if you're passing on a message to someone else, you're saying I'm communicating with him or her. Similarly, if a disease is being passed on from one person to another, or one animal to another, excuse me, or one plant to another, it doesn't matter, from one organism to another, let's just say, they can be called communicated, and that's why infectious diseases are also known as communicable diseases. All right, such and most of the communicable diseases that we know, and the first thing that pops to our mind is a cold, a common cold, and that is spread through the droplets through air. So the droplets of a sick person is suspended into the air when they sneeze or cough or even speak without having proper protection. So that would cause spread in the disease. All right, so they occur through the droplets thrown out by an infected person who coughs or sneezes. Someone standing close by can breathe in these droplets, and the microbes get a chance to start a new infection. That's why we have masks for COVID-19, right? So all of us should wear masks, because even if you're sick, if you are sick yourself, you won't be transferring the droplets to other people. First of all, if you're sick, you're not supposed to be talking to other people, or you're not supposed to be within transferable distance with other people. But if you have the virus, and if before you know that you have the virus, that will prevent the transmission of the droplet, the transmission of the virus through the droplets. And if you are not sick, how the mask helps you is that if there is someone out there who is sick, whether they know it or not, if they don't know it, it's not their fault. Maybe it's not their fault. If they know it and they still want to come and talk to you, it's better to be safe than sorry, right? So that mask will help deflect those droplets. So you won't inhale those droplets, or you won't take in those droplets because of the mask, right? So in the droplet, the virus in the droplets will not enter you, and you will not get that disease, right? That is why masks are very important. um, that is why you have to wear masks, right? So examples of such diseases that spread through air are the common cold and COVID-19, while they mentioned it, pneumonia and tuberculosis. All right, so we all have had the experience of sitting near someone suffering from a cold and catching it ourselves, right? So at such a small scale, it might not be a great deal or a big deal. Maybe if you were sick and your mother or father was tending to you, after a day or two, they'll also start sneezing, right? They might or might not. They might start sneezing with you, or they might experience tiredness themselves, right? But you might keep thinking, you might think I keep going back to COVID-19 every single time, but seriously, if you're sick, do not let others near you, because that's going to spread it to them as well, and that's clearly seen here, right? So we should maintain distance from others if we are infected, because we don't want to transfer that disease on someone else and make them suffer like we are suffering, right? If we are suffering, that's why we must maintain distance. All right, so this is how air transmitted diseases work. This is a creepy human right here, very creepy. All right, so diseases can also be spread through water. All right, so if such such diseases are like food poisoning or water poisoning, if excuse me, if the water is bad, or if it's polluted, or it has the microorganisms present in that water, if we consume that water, we're happily inviting those microorganisms into our bodies. We're saying, oh, I'm just going to drink you, so you can take over you can take over my body and you can make me sick. That is exactly what we're doing when we drink contaminated water. And that is why it is important to drink purified water and to take clean food and water. All right, so right? So this occurs if the excreta of someone suffering from an infectious gut disease like cholera gets mixed with the drinking water used by people living nearby, right? So such diseases are more likely to spread in the absence of safe supplies of drinking water. So if the water is clean, there is no point, there is no chance for you to get to drink contaminated water and to get the disease yourself, because the water doesn't have the microorganisms, right? The sexual act is one of the closest physical contacts two people can have with each other, and there are microbial infections such as syphilis or AIDS that are transmitted. So AIDS that I was just talking about, right? However, too far. However, such sexually transmitted diseases are not spread by casual physical contact like hugs or handshakes or wrestling or anything like that. Alright, so AIDS is caused by the HIV, that is the human immunodeficiency virus. Alright, one thing that makes me cringe is when people say HIV virus, right? If you are one of such people, do not say, because HIV, the V in HIV is virus, human immunodeficiency virus. So when you say HIV virus, you're saying human immunodeficiency virus, and you're saying virus twice. Why are you saying virus twice? It's only once. So it's AIDS is caused by HIV, or AIDS is caused by human immunodeficiency virus. It's not caused by HIV virus. It's caused by HIV. All right. So AIDS is also spread through blood-to-blood contact, right? Or it is transferred from an infected mother to her baby, right? Whether it's during pregnancy or whether it's through breastfeeding, that is transmitted from a mother to a child, or AIDS. I'm talking about AIDS here, from a mother to an infected mother to a child, or from an infected person to another person who receives the infected person's blood, right? Or through sexual contact. All of these are ways of spreading the HIV and ways of spreading the AIDS as a result of that. All right. So the most common vectors are mosquitoes, right? So many species of mosquitoes, mostly, most species of mosquitoes in most species, there are the females that bite animals for their blood because they need the nutrition to lay their eggs. The males mostly feed on plant juices. It's excuse me. In many species, it's the females that bite animals. All right. So mosquitoes feed on many warm-blooded animals. In this way, they transfer diseases from person to person. All right. So how specific are these diseases? There are many diseases, and there are many targets for those diseases. There are many ways of spreading them. There are many agents that help in spreading them. So all of that, there are many types of many organs or many tissues that diseases target. All right. So there are organ-specific diseases and tissue-specific diseases. So the disease-causing microbes enter the body through different means. Alright, so where do they go after they enter the body? The body is very large when compared to microbes, right? While microbes we can't even see, but we can see a person from very far away. So how big is the microbe when compared to an animal body? Not very big, right? In fact, very, very small. So where do these microbes go once they enter our body, and how do they know where to go, right? So the different species of microbes evolved to target different parts of the body, and a part of this is that the selection is connected to their point of entry. All right. So if a virus, let's say COVID-19, enters through our nose or our mouth, it's more likely to infect our respiratory tract, like our lungs, or we have throat pain, we have the cold, we have cough, we have lung issues, we have respiratory problems. So if it enters through our nose and our mouth, it's more likely to affect our lungs. And if anything contaminated enters through our mouth, it's more likely to infect our digestive system, because that's where it will go from the mouth, right? It has a direct passage from our mouth to the stomach. So it's like this free bus ride that tourists get when they go to tourist spots. Maybe you get down at the airport and you're taken to the destination by the, you're just taken to the destination like that. You don't have to memorize the map of the city or anything. You're just straight away taken there, right? It's just like that. When a vector enters through our mouth, it takes a direct journey to our stomach and our digestive system. If it enters through our nose, it takes a direct journey to our lungs or to our respiratory system. Something like that, right? You can think of it like that. Alright? But that doesn't always have to be the case. An infection like HIV that comes through the body via the sexual organs will threaten the lymph nodes all over the body. Alright? Malaria causing microbes that enter the body through a mosquito bite will go to the liver. They will go to the liver and then they'll go to the red blood cells. Right? The brain fever will also enter through the brain through the mosquito bite, and will directly go to the brain. The mosquito doesn't necessarily have to bite us on our forehead or our skull. It doesn't have to do that. It can bite us on any part of our body, but that microbe will go to our brain. Alright, so while there are examples of a few microbes which are more likely to affect the parts of our, the organ systems based on their portal of entry, there are also a few microbes that target specific parts irrespective of their portal of entry. Alright, so the signs and symptoms of a disease will thus depend on the tissue or organ where the microbe targets. Alright, and these are examples of ways that you can find out a disease by knowing the symptom. It's not very accurate, but mostly if you're preparing, so for example, if you're preparing for an exam, if you're preparing very hard, you're not a huge fan of that subject, but you need to pass. You need to get good grades, not just pass. You need to get good grades in that subject. And if you've been preparing for that exam since a very long time, and if you have a headache, let's say, the most likely reason will be because of stress, right? It may be because of another disease through a vector that entered you while you were studying, right? But the most likely reason would be because of stress, right? So by just knowing the symptoms, diagnosing a disease by just knowing the symptoms is sometimes effective, but it's not the most effective way. Alright, so it's also important to remember that the severity of disease manifestations depend on the number of microbes in the body. Alright, so if the number of microbes is very small, the disease manifestations may be minor or unnoticed. You'll probably sneeze for a day or two and then it'll go away if there are very less microbes. But if there are many microbes, then you're more likely to have a headache, tiredness, difficulty in breathing, a blocked nose or a runny nose, all of that. Alright, but if the number of the same microbe is large, the disease can be severe enough to be life-threatening. The immune system is a major factor that determines the number of microbes. The number of microbes surviving in the body, and we shall look into this a little later in the chapter. Alright, so let's talk about the principles of treatment. So one way to kill microbes is to use medicines that kill microbes, right? But we've seen earlier that microbes can be classified into different categories, and for each vector or for each agent, the treatment kind would be different. So these processes might be pathways for the synthesis of new substances, right? Or whether it's for reproduction or for respiration of the vectors of the agent. such specific drugs will inhibit the ability of that microbe to like reproduce or breathe or respire, all of that. All right. So uh, one reason why one reason why making antiviral medicines is harder than making antibacterial medicines is that viruses have few biochemical mechanisms of their own. They enter our cells and they use our machinery for their life processes, right? How dare they do that? Right? They enter our body and then they take over our um, mechanism and they live off our mechanism. It's like a guest entering your home, snatching away your phone or your iPad or whatever, and they start playing games on it, and then they destroy that iPad. How angry would you be? That's essentially what viruses are doing to us. And that guest wasn't even welcome, right? So that guest just came in through the door, took our iPad, played with it, played some game on it, and then did something bad, like broke the screen or something, and just left. And how did the guest leave? After we made sure that guest left, be it by yelling or like asking them to leave, right? So if you take that situation, that unwelcome guest would be the virus. All right, your house would be your body, and your iPad would be your mechanisms, like the remote control of sorts to all your body mechanisms. And breaking the screen of the iPad would be causing some immunosuppression or a disease because of that immunosuppression. And then asking that guest to leave by yelling at them or asking them to leave would be treating that disease with drugs. All right. I hope that helped, because that's a very nice way of thinking of it, right? And let's talk about the principles of prevention. So there are three limitations of this approach to dealing with infectious disease. The first is that once someone has a disease, their body functions are damaged and may never recover completely, right? The second is that the treatment will take time, all right? And the third is that the person suffering can serve as a source from where the infection may spread to other people, all right? So how do we prevent such diseases? The short answer to that would be by maintaining good hygiene sanitation. All right. So for airborne microbes, we could prevent exposure by providing living conditions that are not overcrowded. Right. For waterborne diseases, we can prevent the exposure by providing safe drinking water. Right. For vector-borne diseases, we can provide clean environments that prevent to serve as breeding grounds for those vectors. Right. So let's ask a question that we have not looked at so far. So normally we are faced with infections every day. If someone is suffering from a cold and cough in the class, it's likely that the children sitting around will be exposed to the infection. But all of them do not actually suffer from the disease. Why not? The simple answer would be the strength of their immune system. Alright. So the strength of their immune system depends. The students with the least immune system, immunity, with very low immunity, would be more prone to catching the disease than would the students who have a developed or a good immune system. All right. I want you to read the explanation further to understand what exactly is happening. All right, and then we have an activity here. So these are the general ways of preventing infections, making sure you have a clean environment, making sure you have safe and clean drinking water, good food, disinfected surroundings, and having clean food, having clean air, all of that, they're general ways of preventing infection. So what is the specific ways? So if you want to get rid of mosquitoes in your area because you have like a malaria outburst or you have a dengue outburst, what would you do? First of all, you would avoid stagnant waters because that's where mosquitoes breed. Second of all, you would if you are the government in charge of that area, you would make sure that there is no stagnant water. You would arrange awareness programs. You would probably arrange awareness programs, and you would invite everyone, and you would start saying, take these preventive, measures to, excuse me, to, prevent you getting malaria or dengue. And then you would ask them to apply mosquito repellents on their bodies, in their homes. You would ask them to have mosquito coils if they can, and those vapors, fumes that kill mosquitoes, and mosquito nets, all of that. Those are specific ways of preventing diseases. Alright. So immunization, this is an important part. Read that box. Alright. So what's the concept behind immunization? Is that when you are immunized, the vaccine contains either dead germs or living but weakened germs, or fully active germs. Alright, so, or it could be the serum. It could be one of these four. So if it's dead germs, you won't have, you are most likely to be healthy and fine after you take the vaccine. You won't have any side effects. Living but weakened, minor side effects. Fully active, a little more major side effects. And serum is another helpful way of doing it. Alright, so let's talk about taking one kind of germ in it in our vaccine. And when they inoculate it to us, when they give us that vaccine, our immune system is tricked into thinking that that is the disease. Alright, so the immune system fights that disease. So to fight the disease, the immune system produces substances to fight the disease. Alright, so that would be antibody. Alright, so antibodies are produced to fight the the disease. Alright, so once the disease is once the virus or the bacteria, whatever, has been destroyed, the remaining antibodies are stored in our immune system. Alright, so once we actually come across that disease, this time the immune system is ready to fight that disease because it already has defense soldiers, you can say. It already has the soldiers stored in the immune system, so it can start fighting without any delay, and it is easier to defeat the disease the second time. Alright, so the first time we are controlling the disease, the second time we might not be able to control the disease, and that is how vaccines prevent our immune system. They prepare our immune system to fight the disease. Alright, so that is why, again, coming back to COVID-19, that is why taking vaccines is important, because that will help you prevent the disease the next time you come across it. Alright, so the first time you take the vaccine, you might have slight headache or cold or cough, and you must stay away from people when you have those side effects once you take the vaccine. And then the second time, there is a high possibility of preventing that infection completely, or having very minor side effects. Alright, so initially people were having very major respiratory problems because of the virus, but now that most of them are vaccinated, even though they come across that virus later, their symptoms are being restricted only to maybe just tiredness, fever, cold. Right, tiredness, fever, and cold is bad. I am not saying they're not bad, but that is better than that lung issue or that respiratory issue, right? That is why you need to take vaccines. All right, so with that, there are 5 questions here, and after that we end the chapter. So we have what you have learned points here that you can go through the day before your exam or the day of your exam, and we have exercises that I recommend you try once you are confident with the whole chapter, because then you would feel better uh, if you know everything and then you start answering the exercises, you would feel more confident. All right, so let's talk about so it's time for our points to recap. So we started the chapter with health. We talked about health, how excuse me, how there is a possibility for health to fail. And then we talked about the effect of personal and community issues on health. Then we talked about the difference between being healthy and being disease-free, right? And then we talked about diseases and their causes. We talked about acute and acute and chronic diseases, right? So acute and chronic diseases, the most important and basic difference between acute and chronic diseases would be the the difference in time that they act on in the body. All right. Now we talked about infectious and non-infectious diseases. If this is based on the time, this is based on the source. All right. That's how we can differentiate them between the source, whether whether the disease is being so infectious diseases and non-infectious diseases, we can excuse me, we can differentiate based on the source and transmission ability. All right, so infectious diseases can be transmitted to others, right? That's why they're called communicable, because they can be communicated, if you want to say that. And non-infectious diseases are non-communicable. That is, they cannot be spread from one person to another person by just direct contact. All right. And then we talked about the means of spread. We talked about the principles of treatment and prevention. We talked about vaccines, the 4 different types of germs that are present in vaccines. Then we talked about COVID-19 and how vaccines are important, right? And then I just scrolled through the page of exercises. That is how we are done with this chapter. And we have only 2 more chapters left. The next chapter would be natural resources, which is also a biology chapter. And after that, we have chapter 15. This is 13. Chapter 14 would be natural resources. And with chapter 15, we will end our course, that is NCERT Science for class 9. Alright, so I'm excited to finish this series, right? I hope all of you, I hope this video helped all of you understand the concept better. Do not forget that you can do this. Have a great rest of your day. Do not forget to like and share our video. Subscribe to our channel for more content. And you can do this. All the very best. Rock your exam. Bye-bye.